Hello, friends. This is the AlphaList podcast. I am your host, Toby. The goal of the AlphaList podcast is to empower CTOs with the info and insight they need to make the best decisions for their company. We do this by hosting top thought leaders and picking their brains for insights into technical leadership and tech trends. If you believe in the power of accumulated knowledge to accelerate growth, make sure to subscribe to this podcast. Plus, if you're an experienced CTO, you will love the discussion happening in our Slack space where over 600 CTOs are sharing insights, or visit one of our events. Just go to alphalist.com to apply. Welcome to the AlphaList podcast. I'm your host, Toby, and today I have a guest where I realized whatever time we pick, we'll both be a bit tired. It's Adam Schuck. He's Senior Engineering Director at Canva, and Canva is a company founded in Australia, and that's where he is, right? You're in Sydney?
Absolutely, dialing in from Sydney. Thank you so much for having me, Toby.
And I guess it's a bit warmer there than here, even though you have autumn, I just realized. And I don't know how many people here realize the sheer growth of Canva. So I think you raised 600 million. You have over 2,000 engineers, right?
That's right. So our workforce is over 5,000 and over 2,000 engineers globally now.
And yeah, let's talk about fundamentals later. But you've seen it all before, right? You worked at Google Maps. You built Google Wave, I think, partly.
That's right. Yes.
I don't know how many people here still remember Wave. And you founded a startup acquired by Twitter, and then another one acquired by Canva. So you were basically an acqui-hire.
That's right. Yes. And into Canva, interestingly, I was not working at Zeedings when it was acquired. I was working on another startup. So I had a very non-linear career history.
So you had that. You basically moved out because things weren't working out as expected, and then you came back because Canva wanted to acquire you, or what?
The actual story is that I was working in New York for this startup. We built a real-time search engine. We sold it to Twitter, and we formed their Twitter New York office. And maybe we'll talk about some distributed team stuff later. We were the first remote office for Twitter outside of London, and there was a lot still to figure out, and I had a lot of time on my hands. So I started this Zeedings company with a few Australians on the side. And the reason that I stepped out of it was once I hit the 1 year mark at Twitter, things actually started getting very interesting. We started getting really exciting projects at Twitter New York, and I couldn't both give the level of attention I wanted to both Twitter and to Zeedings, the startup. So I stepped out and we hired a full-time CTO for Zeedings.
Okay. Yeah, sounds as if you navigated well through a series of exits, and also sounds great and speaks for you. And before we start digging deeper on Canva, can you rewind a bit and tell us about your personal nerd journey? Where did it start? Why are you back-end, front-end, pure leadership? What are you and why? And what drives your curiosity on computers?
Absolutely. I would identify myself. Well, look, now I'm an engineering leader, so I've got a team of 220 engineers, and I don't get to code so much unless I'm using some fun AI tools. But when I was coding, I would consider myself a full stack engineer. I got to write web JavaScript code on Google Maps and Google Wave back before we even had a Chrome browser. I was doing backend and information retrieval and search indexing at the startup and at Twitter. I was doing some machine learning, and I don't feel like we use the term big data anymore, but working on some really exciting machine learning and big data problems.
You know how to use Hadoop.
Hadoop, Pig, all these wonderful things.
Mahout, Pig was great, yeah.
Yeah, you are transporting me back. Interestingly, it's funny. I was when I was at my startup, I was invited. When I was not working at Canva, I was invited to come give a tech talk at Canva at a front end event, and I had to tell our Canva COO, Cliff, I'm not a front end engineer. I'm not the right person to talk. And he said, "Don't worry about it. Come talk to us anyway." So I showed up at this event, and my talk was titled. It was basically how not to be a front end engineer. The talk was titled "From Front End to Full Stack," where I was trying to give this heretical speech on, don't pigeonhole yourself into any one part of the stack. So I think that served me really well throughout my career, like being able to now that I manage a complex cross-functional team with front end and back end and machine learning and data scientists and QA, etc., like having that breadth of skills has really helped me.
So would you consider yourself as part of the marquee tech and center tech generation still? So you remember that time, or
marquee tags? Or
marquee tags? You remember those tags? Like that was rolling text?
Yeah.
Center was also phenomenal.
I remember with great nostalgia the early days of web programming. I think for me, you asked my nerd history. When I think I knew I wanted to be a nerd very young. I'm very lucky in that respect. And my grandfather, we didn't have a personal computer back when I was a kid, and my grandfather gave my parents $100, and he said to my parents, "You need to buy him a computer," and you couldn't buy a computer for $100, so my parents were obliged to buy me a computer. And I just loved it. I was programming GW Basic, Microsoft DOS, monochrome computer. I remember apparently I said when I was very young, I need to learn C++ while I'm a kid, otherwise it'll be too late. And my parents always thought that was very funny. And I never got the joke until I was an adult.
And you learned C++, or?
I did, but 20 years later, not when I was a kid. I think I was thrown off by the printf statement.
I personally bought myself a VC20 on the flea market back in the days because, we also didn't have a computer, and I don't know, my parents were not like totally into it, and maybe they didn't see the value back in the days, so did it myself.
I'm very lucky that my parents did.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. But yeah, I mean, if there's curiosity, then curiosity always finds a way, right?
Absolutely.
And why did you build your own companies?
So let me think about, it was a different reason for each of those companies. I think I was very excited by the emerging startup scene. When I exited university, there wasn't much of a startup environment in Australia. Maybe Atlassian was the closest thing that we could point to as a startup. Whereas now we have a number of unicorns in Australia and a thriving technology sector. So I think for me, a big part of that drive was we need more jobs in Australia for competent technical people without having to move over to America. At the time, my timing was exceptional that Google just happened to open an office just as I was looking for a job. But each of the startups were working on very interesting different problems. The first startup I was working with that was based in New York and was called Julpan. This was the one that was acquired by Twitter. For me, this was just an exceptionally interesting technical problem, building a real-time search engine. And half of the team was former Google search quality engineers. So really, it was that. And then it was, and by the way, would you like to come live in New York, which had always been a dream of mine. So that was a big motivation then.
Okay, but you didn't stick to New York then?
No, I said I'm going to spend 1.5 to 2 years in New York. I said to my family, my then fiance, now wife, we moved our lives over there. We ended up there for 5 years. But look, Australia is an amazing country. It's the Australians don't tend to stick around in New York when they've got family and amazing weather to return to.
And snakes, etc.
Oh, I've got a great spider story, but maybe for a different podcast.
Okay, and now talking about Canva. I mean, I guess like everyone here knows Canva. Not really as a business. So as I said initially, you have like 600 million in funding, and you're worth 26 billion roughly, right? So that's phenomenal. That's just like one of the like biggest unicorns that many of us have heard of. And you do you communicate your revenue and EBITDA? Like, are you profitable, or like how does that work together?
Canva we're still a private company. And so obviously that limits the amount of information we're sharing. But we're very proud of a few statistics about our health as a business. Firstly, I think most impressively is we now have 230 million people around the world who are monthly active users. So, when you say to me, we've all heard of Canva, like that absolutely wasn't true when I joined Canva, and I'm delighted to hear that. And I think that's been a great journey. Our revenue, I can share with you, we have annualized revenue now over $3 billion US. And that's been a really great growth story for us as well. And we've managed to do that by remaining profitable as a company over the past 8 years. So that's I think a real feather in our cap, especially given everything going on in the economic environment.
And how to deal with AI in your product? I mean, there's right now, like if you look at LLMs evolving, etc., then there's the death of Photoshop already being spread here and there. How does that affect you? Is that something you take as a challenge, or?
Absolutely. I'd say we view AI as a huge tailwind to our business. It's what we're building here is a visual communication platform, and our mission is to democratize design. And so AI, we really see as this forcing function. It's spreading like fire that just makes design so much more powerful, so much more accessible. So I've got to give a lot of credit to our visionary founders who really saw opportunities very early. Our first one of our first AI features, Magic Write, we turned that around from a hackathon demo inside a team into a launched product in 5 weeks, which for a company of our scale, I think is really impressive. And that we have today, we've now got Magic Studio, which is over 15 native tools in the product. So there's all sorts of things you can do around text and image manipulation and image generation. We also recently acquired Leonardo.ai, which is an Australian AI company. And then, even dating back to, I think AI has played a deeper role in our history as a company. Previously, we had Kaleido, which was the background remover tool for Canva. And so that they really helped pave some of our AI roadmap. But I think AI, it has the ability to be extremely disruptive to many industries. And I'd like to think that Canva, we're doing a really good job of kind of predicting and getting ahead of where this is going. We're really quite heavily invested in, I think that's honestly one of the things that's impressed me most about Canva compared with every other company I've worked at is our adaptability. Like despite our size, despite all those big numbers that you shared before, Toby, we are able to adapt our strategy and really shift the business.
So you're still paranoid.
So yeah, and look, I think obviously there's a lot of very
curious
exciting,
to put it to formulate it more positive.
We are on our toes. I think as a company we're really leaning in that. We take a mix of approaches there. So obviously we for example we partner with the big foundational model companies. We partner with Anthropic, we partner with OpenAI. And those have been fantastic for us. But we're also building proprietary models within the company. And on top of that, we have a whole ecosystem of AI apps. I think it's over 150 apps. So, we're really, I'd like to think that one thing that positions us really well is that we're at the application layer. There's lots of standalone AI tools. There's lots of text-based prompt ways to generate designs and images, etc. But for us, it's that kind of all-in-one visual communication platform. And so, we're really making it much easier to build those designs. And for our customers, it's like, how do we stay on brand at scale? How do we collaborate? All of these, like, we really bring all of that extra tooling, and then, I think package up that AI to make it really powerful.
I just want to say you have quite an audience to package tools to, right? And sell tools to, not necessarily sell for money straight away, but you can give things for free at first, and then it must be one of the biggest PLG stories that exist, right? Like it's kind of PLG, and then you add SLG and you add enterprise, like typical Playbook, but it must be one of the bigger PLG stories, right?
Yeah, I'd say we're PLG at our core. Like, I'm really our journey as a company. If you rewind all the way back to our origins 12 years ago, uh, we always had the big vision. We always had the big dream of we're going to be in every company, we're going to be in every team. But we started as much more of a consumer-oriented product. And so, it makes sense that in those earlier days, we didn't have the sales team, we didn't have the marketing team. It was much more product-led growth. I would say, increasingly as the company grows, we have over 95% of Fortune 500 companies using Canva. So that fundamentally dictates a shift for our business. It of course means we can't just PLG our way into an enterprise contract. And so naturally we do have a marketing team that does amazing work. We have a global sales force, and we've now got, this has been a muscle for us to develop as a company, but we're getting much better now at having that connectivity between the product, the engineering, the sales, the marketing, the growth team, and making sure we're working together.
I mean that I think that's one of the fundamental shifts in engineering in the last years, right? That engineering department ideally starts collaborating deeper, and people work on one direction together, right? And like, I don't know, connect output to outcome ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that in such a large organization? So and how does Conway's law work for you? Like, yeah, I mean, you're building like many apps, you're having app teams, you're having microservice teams. Like, how does it work, and how does it draw one big picture ultimately?
I'm grateful, Toby, that you said Conway's Law before I said Conway's Law. It's a bit of a bingo buzzword
Yeah.
in our team. We think a lot about Conway's Law as a company. Ultimately, we're trying to ship a single product. But unlike many other companies, maybe where you've got 20 different products, that all feel independent, we're trying to really ship that integrated all-in-one product experience where your design assets from a whiteboard you can use over in social media and like really kind of get all those benefits. So that has to show up in how we work. That has to, I think all the way from like how our company and our different teams work together. So for a start, let's go down to the team level. We have cross-functional teams. So all of our teams, we a typical shape in, at least in a product organization, would be, you've got your product manager, your product designer, the engineering team, and then a mix of what we call embedded specialties. I'd say another thing that's we use a matrix organizational structure. So our language is we've got groups and orgs, and then we've got specialties. And so, I am part of the technology specialty. We have a product specialty. And so, we have a number of different groups that are composed of these different functions. But it's really important to us that people feel very much a first-class citizen of their group. We also have this term supergroup. So I'm the engineering lead for teams in education, which is a supergroup. And we're really trying to rally that team and focus on like, what is that mission, building that customer empathy, understanding like what we're running at, and really being quite goal oriented as a company.
And who sets the like paved road. You use that term, I know it from Netflix. Like who decides on that? Like how is that built? How is that shaped?
Like kind of how we operate, or do you mean?
Yeah, well, no, which infrastructure you use as an engineering org? Like, I don't know. Do you go for React or Vue or whatever? Do you build your own things? You mentioned that you use Java in the back end. Like, who decides that, or who decided that, and how is it shaped in an ongoing basis? Do you have like a tech radar where things are put on the spot, or like, and who does that?
Yeah, that's definitely evolved for us over time. I'd say in our earliest days, we're very lucky to have had some absolutely incredible engineers. My good friend Dave Herndon was our CTO for many years of our company. We worked together back at Google, and I think we had like a group of senior engineers who did a great job of really being opinionated around what was the paved road. So, for example, we adopted owners files, which is something familiar to people who've worked at Google or Twitter. We definitely have been a microservices shop, and I think that has served us well through the evolution of the company. Obviously today we have hundreds of microservices, but when we started, we never got into this trap where we had just a single monolith. I think in our early days, we set up our architecture on the service side with kind of pseudo microservices. Like we maybe haven't actually extracted out the microservices into their own services, but we know that it's coming, and being very mindful of what that means at the database level. But yeah, like choices around language and technology. We're mainly a TypeScript shop on the web side. If I fast forward to today, we have governance in the form of specialty teams. So we have the concept of for example, we've got a web foundations team, which is comprised of a number of very senior and in many cases tenured front-end engineers who have been at the company for a long time. And so this is a group of people that you can use to like get consultation on your big project. I'm working on a big front-end project, and I want kind of what's the company's view on how we should approach this. Or this is a team that will make these steering decisions on, like what are we adopting another language?
But is that is it like somehow like built through the matrix? Like are people in different functions and then also part of that core web team, or how is that like, or is it dedicated?
Yeah, so as in, is it their full-time job, or are they part of these other groups?
Right.
Yeah, no, great question. Yes, these are absolutely not people who do that as their full-time job. These are typically we have a number of different groups across the company, and you would typically see somewhat of a uniform representation from those groups. I think it's actually really important for groups. It's almost like an ambassador to that team. We view this as a great career milestone. Like, hey, so-and-so from our group, yes, they're shipping great code, and now we're recognizing them as this is a really key engineer. This is an expert on front-end technology. And so now, they've earned the right to be part of the back-end foundations team. And now, they can be part of that steering team.
And do you create also visibility on that somehow? Like, do you have, I don't know, but some people have it in Slack somehow that you have your different career steps and your achievements in the company in your profiles, or how do you create that visibility also remotely?
We're big time Slack users as a company. We're quite a distributed team, and we're really big on asynchronous work as well. That's always evolving, and so I can just reference like the backend foundations team. They do a newsletter, and so every I think it's month or so they will share out, here's what's going on in backend foundations. Here's the big problems we're thinking about. So that's one way.
I mean, you have so many people. You must think about how to utilize AI as well. I assume, like many organizations, or the wet dream of the CFO right now is to, I don't know, kill half of the workforce potentially, etc. I don't know. Like I at least heard that from a couple of CFOs because like everyone can code now. How do you see that? Do you also have a team around that basically like advocates for AI usage, or do you see it as good actually
Yeah.
if people jump on it, or how do you see that?
Yeah. And by the way, this is also relevant to AI. Absolutely need to mention, like, we absolutely have platform teams. We've got an amazing developer platform group. We have an infrastructure group. And so these groups also play a critical role in like building and defining our paved roads, our tooling. I think that's also showing up in how we think about AI. It is our CEO often says to the company, "We're 1% of the way there." We have extraordinary ambitions uh, of how far this company, Canva, and what we're going to be able to achieve. And so for me, it's how can we, with the amazing engineers that we do have, like how can we augment and up level the capabilities of our team so that we can achieve more of our dreams? It's absolutely the case that we have so many more goals and so many more ideas, great ideas, that we want to ship as a business that we just simply do not have the people and the resourcing to build. So that would be my dream. I spend a good amount of my time, kind of in resourcing
Dreaming.
contention discussions. And so,
Okay.
if we could do more of those goals with the team. But, the approach that we've taken, the term we're using at Canva is AI impact. And so, last year, the term was AI everywhere. It was really about we are experimenting. We know that this is an absolutely critical time in our industry. And we know one thing for certain is that we can't ignore this trend, but we see like huge, the tools maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, were still in their infancy, they're still evolving, but we're now really starting to see in the last 6 months opportunities for some of these productivity benefits, and not just productivity, but also like improving the quality of our ideas, improving our communication and ability to find information scattered in the disparate knowledge base that is all the different tools we have ourselves at Canva. And so we're fostering an environment of curiosity. I think what's really exciting, I'm so grateful. You mentioned the CFO. I'm grateful to the CFO, but also our senior leadership for really giving our team the access to the best tools. Like we're not just picking any one tool. We're giving access to many of the main tools, and it's not just for engineers. We're giving everyone across the company. We're rolling out access because we really think, irrespective of your role or technical background, AI literacy is also a skill that everyone needs to know.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
So you right now run or like ship cursor to everyone's desk, or in engineering, or what does that mean? Or cursor or Copilot, and do you measure somehow if it's used as well, or how does that look like for engineers?
Yeah. We're definitely paying attention to the usage, and we are seeing it increase. We are now in a position where, yes, for our web development, we're encouraging cursor. And then as we're mostly Java on the back end, Copilot is being encouraged as a tool there. And we're also seeing, for example, use of Claude and ChatGPT and tools like this to help our engineers be productive. I would offer, there's been a lot of talk about vibe coding in the industry. It's a very hot topic at the moment. We are, we're really clear with our messaging to our engineering team that we're not entitling our team to abdicate themselves of responsibility. That ultimately every line of code that is shipped at Canva, it's a person responsible for that. And similarly, I think this is where some of these fantastic development processes, we've got great engineering processes at Canva, where if anything, it just reinforces the value of our concept of strong ownership of code and services, where it enforces the value of code review and really leaning in there. So ultimately view humans as the shepherds.
Okay. And did vibe coding and Cursor like lead you back to coding? I assume like it's with 250 engineers, it might be hard to code every once in a while. Like, but do you do that?
I'm personally loving this. Like, yeah, I think I mentioned to you, yeah. Now that I've got this organization over 200 engineers, it's not a good use of my time to be writing code. I have to say with a straight
Right.
face.
Yeah.
But I would say I've written more code in the last 6 months personally than I did in the 3 years beforehand. Like
Yeah.
little weekend
Okay.
projects, little toy apps, not production code, but it's really been exciting.
Mm. Until you hit the wall, right? Like
Till I
with
hit the
vibe
wall.
coding, at least for me, like I try something, I have an idea, and it quickly shapes up, and then like growth slows down, or it decelerates, and then I find myself in an endless loop at a certain point if I don't get like deep down in the code.
Absolutely. Yes. I was having a fun cursor hacking experience on the weekend where I think I got 90% of the way there. And I think I had to tell cursor 10 different ways that it wasn't cleaning up a port. So you still need that foundational knowledge. Absolutely.
Mm, mm. Yeah, let's see where it leads us, right? I mean, with I don't know AJI being around at a certain point, it might not be worth working anymore. But until then, until I don't know, AI writes its own database to host your application, it might be an interesting time, right?
It's an exciting time. I mean, I just can't put I feel so privileged to be part of this transition. Like, what an exciting time in the industry where we're just fundamentally seeing our powers turn to superpowers.
Yeah, it's like the time when punch cards were there, and then ASM was invented, right? And even better than that. So, one thing you also told me that you were very late in adopting a career framework. Like with over 1,000 engineers, you still haven't had a career framework. Was that before because you were like conservative on time consumption, or conservative on generally adopting that, or like what was your take there?
Yeah, so when I joined Canva full time, I suppose I didn't mention in my background also was an advisor to Canva when we were less than 10 people. So I've had a
Oh,
front row
really?
seat. Yeah, so I've
Oh,
had a
wow.
front row seat to this extraordinary success story. But yeah, when
Wow.
I joined full time. We had 150 engineers, 300 people. Uh, most, like officially, those engineers all reported to a single head of engineering. So incredibly flat structure. And a lot of the language we used at the time as a company was minimum viable structure. We always have been trying to embrace all of the benefits of being a startup. The adaptability and the ability to move quickly. But we talked about minimum viable structure, and when I joined, I think we started to see that maybe in a few areas we had less than the minimum viable structure. And in particular, I think the career ladder was a really important one. We were seeing a few challenges around, I'll just give you a few examples like expectation setting. People didn't know, like, you can't expect the same thing of a new grad as you expect of, your most senior experienced engineer at the company. But we didn't have a common language to be able to talk about that. And so, I think me coming in and a few others, like we recognized that maybe we were now at the point where it was actually causing more harm than good to not have these kind of frameworks and structure in place. And so that was one of honestly, it was a really fun project to get to take our workforce on a journey, to introduce our career ladder. We have something called the Growth and Development Framework. And so we this was a cross-functional effort across the company. We absolutely looked at industry standards, and I think for us a really important outcome was helping our team understand how to grow. What is important to us as a company that we want to see in our team members and encourage them as skills we want them to develop. And so before we had this, I'd say team members would typically, there was a million things they could do. Oh, maybe I should do more public speaking, or lots of, like, every shiny object was attractive to them. And so, I think we came up with this language around different role expectations. Initially we established the C track versus the B track, as well as we have another track, the E track. But for engineers, it's primarily C stands for coach, B stands for build. And so the key distinction there being, as you progress through your career, you get to make a choice which of these tracks you want to progress through. And as you progress through your career, the decision you're making as to which track is, do I want to be having my impact primarily through people, or is it through technology? And I think that was really important. I'll call out that until we had that language and this career track, we had a lot of brilliant engineers who were managing. They didn't know, I can do the other thing. So I think it was really helpful when we built that. We gave them, we built kind of these expectation bands, so we have numbers next to them. A B1 is an associate, like a typically graduates. And B3 is a senior engineer, which we view as somewhat interchangeable with the entry-level manager role, the engineering manager. And then they start to diverge, like principal engineer versus director of engineering. And so that's what we ended up building. I think what was really interesting for us is, from all I know, companies typically roll out such a thing when the companies are much smaller. I've heard of companies doing this when they're 30 people, when they're 50 people, when they're 100 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you can imagine, like, how do we? Firstly, we've got to make sure we've got confidence that this is the right language, that we're building the right incentive structure for our company. To encourage people to, do activities and grow in ways that are aligned with the company's interests. But we had to, the rollout plan meant we had to go through for every single one of those 1,000+ engineers and figure out, okay, like retrofit. Is this person a B2 or a B3?
What's your box?
What's your box?
Yeah.
And then we had to do, roll out the communication of it. And then we had to, get people really bought into this idea that, no, this is actually a good thing for our company. This is a good thing for you. This is going to help you understand, when you have a conversation with your manager, and you say to your manager, how do I progress? How do I get, ultimately, how do I have more impact? How do I get a pay rise? Things like this. That they actually have a consistent language across our entire workforce. So, I think that consistency at scale was really important for us.
Okay, and you also introduced salary bands at the same time and stuff like that, or?
Yes, absolutely. So I think what was so fantastic about rolling this framework out is it solved, like 10 different problems for us as a company. And so salary bands was one of them. Like, before we had salary bands, we didn't have an equitable process for ensuring that we are consistently paying people who are having the same impact for the company in different places. Like, that was very hard to regulate and control. So it unlocked salary bands for us. It unlocked hiring for us. Like, you can imagine how hard it is to hire into a company of over 1,000 engineers when someone's coming from a company used to being called a staff engineer, and we're like, well, you're just an engineer. So, it helped us assess the talent, sell the role, bring them in. So I think it really, I think it was a huge win for us. It was a big effort rolling this out. And, obviously today, I think maybe the only other call out I'd make is that I think that Canva has done a really good job to get us to the scale that we are today, over 2,000 engineers, while maintaining a focus on success of the company. I really do feel that camaraderie, that engineers are motivated by the mission of the company, and we always saw that one of the risks of rolling out an engineering career ladder and an incentive structure is that potentially, we end up with people who are doing work not because they think it's what's best for Canva, but because this is how I get my promotion. This is the next thing. And I think that one we've had to navigate exceptionally carefully. We're always very careful to not overstate, the roles and the promotions. For example, I just had the privilege of announcing all of the promotions we've done in my organization to my technology team. And we really try and focus it on, here's what this person is doing. Here's what they're doing for Canva and why we're so excited, and also their personal development, seeing those skills growing rather than, kind of this perfunctory, I made it from T5 to T6 or whatever I sometimes hear from colleagues at other companies.
Yeah, I can imagine that you want to avoid that those conversations dominate, right? Or wanted to avoid that. Yeah. And is it then like, do you also integrate it in your, I guess you mentioned hiring, right? I guess you also have feedback processes. So your culture amp, as like you're both from Australia,
Yes.
like you basically integrate that assessment wherever you can, or
Against the roles, you mean? Like that now that we've defined? Yeah. So we call these roles.
Are you really there?
Absolutely.
How to grow, etc.
And I think this has been documented publicly in a few places. Like this now unlocks that language around expectations. So now a manager is able to confidently say to someone, we have this language of thriving or excelling, to be able to tell someone how they're achieving. Yes, we do use Culture Amp, and we a few months ago did our we call it our growth and impact process, which other companies might call a performance review process. And that's absolutely a touch point where, the whole 360, all the peers that the manager can comment on, oh, is this person operating, how is their impact compared with the role profile that they are currently sitting in?
One let's say detour to the tech side of things. I mean, you mentioned Java, you mentioned TypeScript. So I like one thing that I find special about your application is that it's really like an app, right? Like it's not that like you really have a use case for single page web apps. You really have a use case for state in the browser, etc., which isn't the case for many companies that strive for that. What do you think is the fundamental secret of your snappy app and the success of it and on the tech side?
Yeah, let's share some secrets to the whole world.
No, I mean, what is your mode on the tech side? Like, is it like state management? Is it like, do you have like a proprietary self-developed framework that you're really proud of? Like, what are you really proud of if you look at your tech stack?
Yeah, look, I think we've made some exceptional technology decisions through the course of our company. Compared with the other companies I've worked at, where years of technical debt define the technology team. We're in a really fortunate position that we're able to advance and really ship so much new product. Maybe I'd point to two particular examples that I think were fantastic, like foundations for us. So one is our concurrent editing, the work that we did there. I would like to, I mentioned before that I used to work on Google Wave, a product that no longer exists. But Google Wave in many ways was like a dry run for a few of our old engineers on how to build concurrent editing. And so this was, back, if I date back to the history there, like back at Google, the Canva's first CTO was a tech lead on the Google Wave project. And, we didn't get it all right when we built Google Wave, but at the time, I don't think people remember this, but concurrent editing was not a common feature in web software. When Google Wave was shipped, if two people edited a Google document, in a similar part of the document, you'll get this big pop-up that said, like, I've saved what you're writing to clipboard. Please save and refresh the page and type it in. So, I think now people tend to think of concurrent editing as somewhat of a table stakes feature that you expect across your software. But in our early days, so we did a re-architecture of our web editor, which shipped in 2018. It was like a fundamental rewrite of our entire web stack. At its core, the operational transformation logic and how we think about what is the Canva document and the document model, and building that in a concurrency native way was really a huge success story for us. And that shows up in every new feature we build today, that we've got this foundational concurrent editing, like the operational transformation library, available to us. And it just so happened that that was fantastic. Obviously this was always part of our plan, but the timing of it, we didn't go, oh, look, we want to become a Teams and Enterprise product. Oh dear, we better build concurrent editing. Like, this was from day one. This was a feature that we knew we needed to build. We knew it would be significant. We didn't want to build it into the first version of Canva because you need to have product market fit. We really needed to establish Canva as a product first. But then, we did this rewrite, which we called E2, Editor 2. And with it came a complete restructuring of our web code base that really, some fantastic decisions that were made by some of our top engineers that really set up our code base for scale. So I think that's one. The other example, I think we went on a bit of a journey with mobile. And so when I joined Canva, we had Android developers, iOS developers, web developers, and as you're familiar with our product, there's an extraordinary amount of functionality. Like, we really have been pushing the browser to the limit in what you can do. And you mentioned our good friend the CFO. Like, we're not in a position to have 3 times the engineering workforce to build every feature. And we were seeing just the timelines were blowing out. We ship a feature to web first. It's not on Android. Month delays. What does this feature mean native? So we had a program of work which we referred to as Mobile X, WebX, where we adopted Electron, and basically, at its core, our product is a web product. But I think we've done an exceptional job in terms of performance, in terms of usability. We make sure that our product has very native functionality, on each of these respective platforms. But I think that was not an obvious decision at the time. And if I reflect on the 5 years since we made that transition as a company, no question that was the correct decision. And I really can see the benefits, not just in terms of not having to hire triple the engineering, but in terms of just building a really smooth, high performance product.
Maybe one step back on your first example on concurrent editing. What does that concretely mean if I move an object on your canvas? Is there you basically what do you transmit to the server?
Yeah, if for anyone who's not familiar with it's called operational transformation, which is the fundamental. It's like a computer science concept. We did not invent this at Canva. This is a term that's been around for decades. I think Jupyter or a few others pioneered it. But the idea there is that when you type something, when you move a graphic, when you add something, we're not sending an operation to save the entire document state. Rather, we are transmitting an operation. And so every mutation to the document is represented as an operation. And operations have some really nice properties, like they're composable. If I type this, then I type that. We can compose that into an operation, which is I've typed both those things together. And then when it gets interesting, so we have this stream of operations going between the server and the client. And every now and then we're kind of, persisting what is the document state, which is important information to have. But what's really I highly recommend for any of the true geeks on the call, if you're not familiar with operational transformation, to have a read, because it's really exciting and interesting. You can then take that relationship between that client and server and expand that to multiple clients, and then what you need is kind of a way of resolving conflicts. So you can imagine, Toby, if you and I are in the same document, we both type in the same place at the same time, we need eventual consistency. We need the document, we can't have I type A, you type B, and we end up with AB and you end up with BA. That's obviously not acceptable product outcome. And so there is, mechanisms for resolving. How do we compose these different operations from different clients? And the beauty of it is it kind of, if you just solve the kind of operational composition at the lowest levels, and you design your document model in a certain way that's compatible with this scales all the way up to, and now we are commenting on documents, and I have 1,000 people in a document all dropping images, which is, really exciting to see how well that scales.
So, and who resolves the conflicts? Is that the server?
That's right. Yes, the server resolves the conflicts.
Okay. Otherwise, there would be complicated voting mechanisms, like which client is doing
Absolutely.
that, etc.
Some very, very fun algorithms.
Also theoretically interesting, but
yeah, and then it becomes very interesting questions around tenancy and where this document, who the document belongs to.
Right. Absolutely. So it's basically journaling at the core, right? And does that then mean that you're one of the biggest Kafka users around, or?
I'm trying to remember if we talk about exactly what technology we use under the hood there. But yes, it's quite significant, the amount of information that we've got flowing back and forth on these concurrent editing.
Okay. Can imagine. Yeah, super interesting. But looking at the time, you have to sleep soon, and I have to work. Not really. But coming slowly to the end, is there anything that on the top of your head that you recently discovered that made you way more productive, or that was a fundamental shift in your thinking, apart from obviously, GPT bubbling up at a certain point? Anything where you think this is like a fundamental cheat for your life, really helps you being more productive?
So it would be very easy to answer with some AI for that one.
Yeah.
Look, I'll certainly give that answer. Is absolutely the case that all of my weekly processes, that I've taken a good hard look at, how can I use various LLMs to improve my life. I would say a non-technical answer to that one. I am, in terms of productivity, really owning my calendar, and I like to start from, what are my goals? I set goals for myself every 6 months. This is something we all do at Canva. But then breaking that down to, okay, what are my goals for the week? And then, I am ruthlessly defensive with my calendar in terms of I start the week with time blocked off, no meetings, for planning my week. I end the week with wrapping up the week, reflecting on the week. I make sure that I have focus time blocked out. I think a lot of people look at my calendar and they get very scared. They're like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, there's no white pixels." But I think the bit that they don't realize is that is by design. I think the kind of the mental shift there, especially if you move to kind of the manager schedule instead of the maker schedule, is your time. It's far too easy to steal someone else's time by just dropping a calendar entry in someone's calendar. And if I am only doing meetings, and that I am not doing my job. I need to actually be thinking. I need to be doing strategy. I need to be really, So I think for me, that's the biggest hack, is having an incredibly high amount of ownership over how I spend my time and how I spend my week. which Toby, yourself as a parent, like so important to do this. I think once I had a kid, I no longer had the luxury of you know what, I'll just work on this tonight, like
Yeah, on the weekend,
or
right?
the weekend. No, that is no longer my time. I mean, that's not to say that people don't do a bit of work outside of hours. But yeah, I think that is a really important shift for me.
So that means that you manually block your calendar every week. You manually orchestrate that every Sunday or something, or is there some automated mechanism? Like I use Reclaim AI, for example, to kind of defend my calendar. I at least try it.
Yeah, I've played with Reclaim. I do find like I am at the point where I just have such a strong opinion on how my calendar should look. I also,
Yeah.
I have teammates and I need to synchronize my calendar with them. I can't be in focus time when we need to be having a meeting. And so, we do have a shape to the week, like clearly Monday, you're kicking off the week. Wednesday, the whole company, one of my favorite things, we have meet free Wednesday. So from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Time zones make this hard, but the culture is this is when people are doing focus work. This is not a time, you can have a workshop or a meeting, but not a recurring meeting.
Okay. Yeah, recurring meetings quickly take over otherwise, right? And you plan that then every week, basically. You manually set your blockers, etc.
I do a pro tip. One of my favorite hacks, which I wish I'd done earlier in my career, is every Friday afternoon as part of my reflection, I tell my future self what I'm going to do Monday morning. Because that feeling, you come back to work on a Monday morning, you had a good weekend and you can't remember what you do here. I set my goals for the week. I really kind of give myself a kickstart, and I do that on Friday afternoon. On a daily basis, this is extremely high technology, especially since I work at Canva, but I use sticky notes. And so, every day I have a single sticky note, which is what are my priorities for the day, and I cross them off as I go. And, for me, the power of the sticky note is like it's constraining. It limits, like it forces me that I can't just do 30 things today, and I need to prioritize.
Yeah. And you already achieved quite a lot. Well, the day is almost over for you. So.
Yeah, this is how do you say, my last meeting for the day.
Great. And you just said that you're talking to your future self. I still have a little surprise for you that you'll now be able to talk to your past self. So let's assume. Let's assume there's a hidden feature in your journaling feature or your journaling core at Canva that allows you, like undocumented API that you yourself as an advisor coded back or coded into Canva back in the days. It allows you to travel back in time, and we both now create a journal entry that lets us travel back to the year 2011. I think you were working back at Twitter in New York at that date or that year, and observe yourself for a while, building real-time search, enjoying New York life, etc. With your wife, and you now have the chance to whisper something into young Adam's ears. What would it be?
That was a very obvious answer to that one, which is join Canva when they first offered me the job. I think I was enjoying my life in New York too much. A very exciting role at Twitter, and maybe didn't see quite the expansive. I didn't see the full picture for Canva that our CEO Mel has always seen. So that's an easy one.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Thanks a lot. I hope you still got your stock options, etc., at a reasonable amount.
Canva looks after all of us. I mean, look, I don't regret any of the journey. I think I went on a different path. I learned amazing things. I would definitely say that some of these experiences from the different startups and from Twitter and Google. By the time I got to Google, not to Google. So by the time I got to Canva, I feel like I really was able to add a lot of value right from the get-go. because, I'd seen some of these other experiences.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much for being my guest here, and for not staying up late in your case, but at least like giving me the power over your calendar for an hour.
This is what I would consider an excellent use of an hour in a calendar. Thank you so much, Toby, for having me, and thank you to all of your listeners for giving us their time.
Yeah, thanks a lot to you, and enjoy the rest of your day. Hope to see you soon in person somewhere, Australia, Europe.
If you come to Australia anytime, I'll be more than happy to show you around.
Thanks a lot. Bye. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the AlphaList podcast. If you liked this episode, share it with friends. I'm sure they love it too. Make sure to subscribe so you can hear deep insights into technical leadership and technology trends as they become available. Also, please tell us if there is a topic you would like to hear more about or a technical leader whose brain you would like us to pick. AlphaList is all about helping CTOs getting access to the insights they need to make the best decisions for their company. Please send us suggestions to cto@alphalist.com. Send me a message on LinkedIn or Twitter. After all, the more knowledge we bring to CTOs, the more growth we see in tech. Or, as we say on AlphaList, accumulated knowledge to accelerate growth. See you in the next episode.
Dieser Podcast wird produziert von Podstars bei OMR.